Most people do not lose their financial future in one dramatic collapse. They lose it through 10 quiet leaks. A little convenience here, a little status there, a little laziness disguised as comfort, a little optimism disguised as a bargain, a little trust placed in things they never bothered to understand. And by the time they wonder why they still feel financially trapped after years of hard work, the bucket has already been draining for so long that they mistake the leak for normal life. I have spent my life studying capital allocation, and I can tell you something that ordinary people almost never want to hear. Your biggest financial problem is often not low intelligence, low income, or bad luck. It is uninspected spending. It is friction. It is the silent tax you accept because the charge looks small, the habit feels normal, and the crowd is doing the same thing. You do not need to light money on fire in the driveway to destroy wealth. You only need to build a life with 10 holes in it. That is how it happens. One hole is convenience. One hole is vanity. One hole is fake savings. One hole is loyalty to companies that have no loyalty to you. One hole is entertainment you barely use. One hole is clutter that makes you feel aspirational for 12 minutes and burdens you for 12 months. One hole is investing in things you cannot explain. One hole is buying too much because quantity flatters your ego more than it serves your life. One hole is paying recurring fees for an identity you no longer live. And one hole is buying protection that often protects the seller more than it protects you. None of this sounds dramatic. That is why it is so dangerous. People prepare emotionally for a crash. They do not prepare intellectually for a leak. A crash terrifies you. A leak anesthetizes you. A crash makes headlines. A leak becomes a line item. A crash forces action. A leak teaches tolerance, and tolerance is expensive. If you want freedom, you must stop looking only at your income and start examining the architecture of your outflow. You must stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this drain capital, attention, and optionality more than it returns them?" That is the real question. I am not interested in making you feel guilty over every cup of coffee or every small pleasure. Miserliness is not wisdom. Deprivation is not strategy. The point is not to squeeze every ounce of joy out of life. The point is to stop funding things that quietly weaken your position while pretending to improve it. There is a difference between spending for joy and spending from autopilot. There is a difference between buying utility and buying a story. There is a difference between paying for a tool and paying a friction tax. Most households never learn that distinction, so they work harder to overcome leaks they refuse to seal. They focus on earning another $5,000 a year while letting $10,000 leak out through laziness. Emotional purchasing, unused subscriptions, brand loyalty, sloppy insurance habits, false bargains, and investments they do not understand. That is not a money problem. That is a filter problem. The first leak I want you to see is the convenience fantasy. There was a time when certain alternatives looked fresh, charming, and financially clever. They felt like a smarter version of the old system. You told yourself you were not just paying for shelter. You were paying for uniqueness, freedom, a more authentic experience. Then the math changed. This is how traps evolve. They do not stay attractive by staying honest. They stay attractive by living on the memory of what they used to be. A lot of people are still paying for the legend of a product long after the economics have turned against them. That is true whenever a supposedly clever option becomes commercialized, layered with fees, stripped of charm, and loaded with hidden inconvenience. It starts by looking cheaper. Then it quietly adds cleaning charges, awkward rules, checkout chores, logistical headaches, and a strange little insult at the end where you realize you paid premium money to do part of the work yourself. That is not convenience. That is outsourced friction. People will pay more than they should because they are buying the image of being savvy. They want to feel like they found the better path. But a lot of better options are only better in the story, not in the ledger. I like simple comparisons. If two choices cost roughly the same, but one gives you more service, more flexibility, more points, less hassle, and less cleanup. The answer is not complicated. Stop paying for romance when the romance has already been industrialized. The moment a spending choice requires you to carry groceries farther, clean more, coordinate more, worry more, and leave with less upside than the standard alternative. You are not saving money, you are buying inconvenience with a marketing halo around it. That halo is expensive. The second leak is aspirational clutter. A lot of people buy books the way other people buy vitamins. They are not purchasing use. They are purchasing intention. They are buying a future version of themselves that they have not earned yet. The shelf fills up, the unread stack grows, the identity feels serious for a moment. Then the objects sit there like little monuments to unfinished self-improvement. Now, I like learning. I have spent more of my life reading than most people would tolerate. But reading is not the same thing as buying reading. Owning a book and absorbing a book are not remotely the same activity. If you keep purchasing physical proof of your ambition while consuming very little of it, the spending is not educational. It is theatrical. You have to be ruthless with that distinction. A lot of what passes for self-investment is really self-decoration. The same goes for courses never finished, software never used, journals never opened, equipment never mastered, and supplies for hobbies that exist mainly as future fantasies. People love to buy the costume of discipline because it is easier than living the discipline. That is why clutter matters financially. Clutter is frozen decision making. It is cash turned into objects that deliver neither utility nor resale value nor peace of mind. It crowds your space, dulls your attention, and creates a false sense of growth without the hard part of growth. If an audiobook, a borrowed copy, a library hold, a podcast, or a digital version gets the job done with less cost and less physical drag, then the wise choice is obvious. Your ego may prefer the bookshelf. Your balance sheet prefers the lower friction path. The third leak is the loyalty tax. This one quietly drains millions of households because people confuse familiarity with value. They stay with the same insurer, provider, or service simply because switching feels annoying, because their parents use that company, because the bill is on autopay, or because nothing has exploded yet. That is not rationality. That is drift. Drift is one of the costliest forces in personal finance. Your life changes, your driving changes, your mileage changes, your risk profile changes, your neighborhood changes, your work habits change, but the bill keeps drafting itself as if none of that happened. The company is delighted by your inertia because inertia is profitable. Most firms do not reward your passivity. They monetize it. If you drive far less than you used to, but you are still paying as if you live on the road, you are donating margin to an institution that never asked for your permission to keep overcharging you. It just counted on your silence. That is how the loyalty tax works. It is not a fee printed on a contract. It is a behavioral premium charged to people who do not revisit old assumptions. And that pattern reaches well beyond insurance. It applies to cell phone plans, internet packages, recurring memberships, brand habits, and anything else that renews quietly in the background while your life moves on. You do not become financially stronger by earning only. You become stronger by renegotiating reality. The family that saves $40 a month by correcting one drifting bill has not merely saved $40. It has weakened the habit of passive overpayment. And once you weaken that habit, you start seeing it everywhere. That is when compounding changes sides. The fourth leak is occasion spending. This is the spending that arrives dressed as necessity. A special trip, a themed event, a wedding, a party, a conference, a weekend with a certain social code. Suddenly, a purchase that would look absurd on an ordinary Tuesday starts masquerading as reasonable because the calendar blessed it. People become temporary hostages to context. They buy the hat for the rodeo, the dress for the one evening, the shoes for the photo, the gadget for the trip, the accessories for the moment. Then the moment ends and the object becomes dead inventory. One use, full price, zero future role. That is poor capital allocation. The emotional mechanism here is very simple. You want to avoid feeling underdressed, out of place, or visually inferior in a highly specific setting. So you buy relief, not utility relief. Relief is often the most overpriced product in the economy. If you will use something repeatedly, that is one discussion. Repeated utility can justify spending, but if you are solving a 3-hour emotion with a 3-year object, you are usually making a bad trade. This is why wealthy, looking people often stay financially weak. Their money goes toward managing moments instead of strengthening systems. Moments vanish. Systems remain. A strong financial life is built when you stop letting temporary social pressure make permanent claims on your capital. You do not need a house full of souvenirs from your insecurity. You need a filter. If the item will not survive beyond the event in any meaningful way, the purchase should face brutal scrutiny. The fifth leak is entertainment rent. I have nothing against entertainment. What I oppose is expensive entertainment that has quietly lost its ratio. A lot of people are still paying monthly for the idea of being the sort of person who uses a service, not for the actual hours of enjoyment they receive. That distinction matters. If a service costs a little and you use it a lot, fine. That can be one of the best bargains in life. But if the price keeps rising while your actual usage stays tiny, you are renting identity. You are paying to preserve access to a version of yourself that barely shows up. This happens all the time with television packages. Premium streaming bundles, sports subscriptions, software plans, news packages, and other forms of recurring entertainment. The bill lands every month, whether or not the value does. Here is the brutal arithmetic. When a household spends close to $1,000 a year to watch only a handful of games, episodes, or events, the purchase is not harmless because it is just entertainment. It is a ratio problem. The cost per hour is absurd, but most people never divide the total. They just let the subscription hide inside the month. Monthly pricing is one of the most effective anesthetics ever invented. It makes bad annual math feel tolerable. That is why I want you to learn a new habit. Convert recurring entertainment into yearly numbers, then divide by actual hours used. Once you do that, a lot of seductive services stop looking convenient and start looking embarrassing. The sixth leak is the ignorance premium. This one is the most dangerous because it can erase years of discipline in one foolish act. People hear an idea from a friend, a founder, a coworker, a charismatic operator, or a social feed. The story sounds exciting. The opportunity feels exclusive. They do not want to miss out. So they move money into something they do not understand and call it investing. That is not investing. That is self-endangerment with a sophisticated label. I have said for years that you do not have to swing at every pitch, and you certainly do not swing at pitches. You cannot see clearly if you cannot explain how a business makes money, what good margins look like in that industry, what the risks are, what the incentives are, what failure looks like, and why you have an edge in judging it. Then you are not operating inside your circle of competence. You are operating inside your appetite for excitement. Excitement is expensive, Plenty of people lose money not because they are foolish in general, but because they briefly become humble in the wrong place. They trust someone else's confidence more than their own ignorance. A friend of a friend knows the founder. The deck looks polished. The opportunity feels private. So the check gets written. Then 6 months later, the company is gone. Money disappears fastest, where understanding is weakest. And when people do this, they often comfort themselves by saying the check was small. 5,000 here, 3,000 there, 10,000 some. But a small check written without understanding is still a large mistake, because it trains the worst instinct in finance, the belief that unfamiliarity can be outsourced. It cannot. You can delegate tasks. You cannot delegate comprehension and expect safety. This is why broad funds, cash instruments, you understand straightforward bonds, and simple vehicles often beat flashy private opportunities for ordinary people. It is not because simplicity is glamorous, it is because simplicity is legible. Legibility protects capital, confusion invites stories. Stories invite losses. The seventh leak is quantity theater. People love bulk because bulk flatters the primitive part of the brain that equates more with better. A full cart feels like victory. A warehouse purchase feels efficient. A giant pack feels like discipline. But none of that matters if the real end of the transaction is the trash can. Waste is not savings. Buying too much food because the unit price looks lower is one of the oldest household illusions in existence. It looks rational at the store and irrational in the refrigerator. The milk expires, the meat turns, the eggs outlast your appetite, produce wilts. You do not consume the bargain, you dispose of it. That is not frugality. That is decaying inventory. Businesses understand this. Unsold inventory is not a sign of prudence. It is trapped capital. Yet families will load their homes with perishable goods. They are unlikely to use and tell themselves they saved money because the sticker price per unit was lower. No, you only save money on what you actually use. The rest is theater, and there is another hidden cost. Oversized buying often licenses oversized consumption. When abundance is sitting in front of you, restraint usually weakens. So the same habit that was supposed to save money can distort your eating, your planning, your waste, and your attention. The right question is never, is this cheaper in bulk? The right question is, will this convert cleanly into use before it converts into waste? If the answer is uncertain, the bargain is weaker than it appears. The eighth leak is the fake bargain. This one is everywhere because retailers understand a sad truth about human nature. Most people would rather feel smart than actually be disciplined. So stores create the feeling of victory through discount language, sale, clearance, limited time, 40% off, buy more, save more, members only. Final markdown. And just like that, an unnecessary purchase starts feeling like financial responsibility. It is nonsense. You did not save $600 if you spent $300 on clothes, gadgets, decor, or accessories you were never planning to buy in the first place. You converted money into merchandise under the influence of urgency. The discount did not create discipline. It bypassed it. This is one of the most useful mental flips in finance. If you were not already going to buy it, the sale price is not your savings. The amount you spent is your spending. Once you internalize that sentence, a lot of retail magic breaks. The sale does not exist to strengthen your household. It exists to move inventory. It exists to trigger action before thought catches up. It exists to make the merchant's problem feel like your opportunity. That is why great allocators separate need from price. If you already plan to buy something and the discount is real, fine. That can be intelligent timing. But if the sale itself creates the desire, you are not shopping, you are being steered. This is where emotional adulthood starts. You stop treating every markdown as a gift. You start treating many of them as bait. The ninth leak is subscription drift in the software age. This is a newer form of leakage because digital services make overpayment feel frictionless. You sign up for the premium version when your needs are more demanding. Maybe you are hosting meetings, doing remote work, managing a team, or solving a temporary problem. Then life changes. The need fades, competitors multiply, free alternatives improve, and the premium charge keeps hitting your account as if nothing changed. That is a modern leak. Software companies love this pattern because the product is intangible and the downgrade decision feels mentally costly even when the dollar amount looks small. You tell yourself it is only $17, only $12, only $9. But the number is not a point. The point is the habit of paying for capacity you do not need. Unused capability is one of the quietest wastes in the digital economy. If free tools now cover your actual usage, then the paid tier is no longer a tool. It is an outdated self-concept. You are paying for a previous season of your life. Do not do that. There is nothing noble about maintaining premium access to features that no longer matter to you. There is no medal for over-equipping your routine. Strip the system down, pay for what serves the current reality, not for what once felt professionally impressive. That same logic belongs in every corner of life. Stop financing former versions of yourself. The 10th leak is purchased reassurance. This one shows up every time a cashier, website, or salesperson offers to protect you from future uncertainty for a price. Extended warranty, extra coverage, added plan, premium protection, 3-year shield, replacement guarantee. On the surface, it feels prudent. Beneath the surface, it is often one of the cleanest margin machines in retail. Why? Because the seller understands probability better than the buyer does. The price is not set to make you safer in expectation. It is set to make the warranty provider richer in expectation, and then the insult arrives. Exclusions, conditions, expiration windows, usage carve, outs, claim friction, forgotten receipts, denied cases, long hold times, partial coverage. Replacement rules so narrow, they feel like satire. People buy reassurance and discover later that the reassurance was heavily conditional. Now, are there cases where protection makes sense? Of course, but the default behavior of adding extra coverage to every consumer electronic is rarely the mark of a strong allocator. More often, it is the mark of someone who hates uncertainty so much that they pay too much to make it feel smaller. That instinct can be exploited forever. A stronger household often carries small risks directly and reserves formal protection for truly significant exposures. You self-insure where the expected cost is manageable. You buy robust coverage where the downside is large enough to matter materially. That distinction is adult finance. The weak household buys comfort line by line. The strong household studies expected value. Now step back and notice what ties all 10 leaks together. None of them are really about products. They are about incentives, self-image, and unexamined drift. The overpriced stay is really about paying for a story after the economics have changed. The unread bookshelf is really about buying identity instead of practice. The stale insurance bill is really about passivity. The one-time outfit is really about social pressure. The bloated entertainment plan is really about failing to do ratio math. The speculative investment is really about ego and fear of missing out. The bulk purchase is really about confusing volume with efficiency. The sale purchase is really about confusing urgency with savings. The premium software tier is really about financing an outdated version of yourself. The extended warranty is really about paying retail rates for emotional relief. That is the whole game. What wrecks people financially is not just low income. It is repeated surrender to bad incentives. You can make a respectable salary and still live as a servant to leaks. You can get raises and remain fragile. You can look stable and still be bleeding optionality every month. That is why I want you to think in a harsher way than most personal finance advice allows. Do not ask whether a purchase is common. Ask whether it strengthens your position. Do not ask whether other people do it. Ask whether it increases control. Do not ask whether the monthly price is small. Ask whether the annualized drain is absurd. Do not ask whether the purchase feels good in the moment. Ask whether it survives sober arithmetic. Do not ask whether you can afford it with this paycheck. Ask whether repeated versions of this decision move you toward ownership or keep you trapped in maintenance mode. That is the test. I have always believed that the purpose of money is not applause. It is optionality. It is refusal power. It is the ability to say no to bad deals, bad work, bad pressure, bad timing, bad partners, bad panic, and bad dependence. But refusal power is built from retained capital. And retained capital is impossible when your life is perforated by small, tolerated leaks. The world teaches people to focus on earning more because earning more sounds ambitious. Ceiling leaks sounds boring. But boring is often where freedom begins. A family that closes 10 leaks does something extraordinary. It changes the speed at which capital can accumulate. It lowers the stress threshold of the household. It reduces the amount of income required to feel stable. It converts noise into investing capacity. It weakens the psychological grip of every paycheck. It starts moving from worker logic to owner logic. That shift matters. Worker logic says, I need more money. Owner logic says, I need a better system. Worker logic chases more inflow. Owner logic protects outflow, compounds surplus, and avoids stupid losses. Worker logic wants relief. Owner logic wants structure, and structure wins. If you seal a few of these leaks, the first result is not glamour. The first result is space. Space in the checking account, space in the home, space in the calendar, space in the mind. Then comes the real reward. That recovered capital can finally be pointed somewhere useful. Savings, index funds, treasury bills, debt reduction. A real emergency reserve. A vacation you can actually enjoy because you are not financing it on top of chaos. A small business idea you understand. A skill you will truly use real ownership. That is the hidden power of subtraction. Most people try to build wealth by adding. A lot of intelligent people build it faster by removing. They remove leak after leak after leak until the system finally starts holding water. And that is what I want for you. Not a prettier budget, not a more performative version of discipline, not a temporary burst of motivation. I want a household that leaks less. I want a mind that is harder to manipulate. I want a buyer who is less impressible, less suggestible, less autopilot, driven, less vulnerable to marketing dressed up as self-care, convenience, safety, identity, or savings. Because once you become that person, the world charges you less for nonsense. And that is a form of wealth all by itself. The final test is simple. Go through your own life and find the leaks you have been defending. Not the leaks you already dislike. Those are easy. Find the ones you excuse. Find the bill you keep because canceling feels annoying. Find the subscription tied to a life you no longer live. Find the purchases that let you feel prepared, cultured, stylish, or smart without producing much actual utility. Find the deal that made you spend. Find the inventory that becomes trash. Find the investment you entered because someone else sounded certain. Find the protection plan that calms your nerves more than it improves your expected outcome. Then ask one brutal question. If I repeated this decision for 10 years, would it make me freer or more dependent? That is the doorway. Most people will not walk through it because the leaks feel normal and the world is built to normalize them. But if you do walk through it, you begin to live differently. You become less available for manipulation, less willing to pay for convenience theater, less likely to subsidize your own clutter. Less eager to rent identity, less vulnerable to hidden taxes disguised as lifestyle. And when you stop bleeding in 10 small places, you do not need miracles. You need time. Time to let discipline turn into surplus. Time to let surplus turn into capital. Time to let capital turn into independence. That is how the bucket fills, not through drama, through refusal. So here is the choice. You can keep hunting for bigger income while your life leaks from every seam and wonder why progress still feels slow. Or you can become the kind of person who seals the holes first, protects the water, and finally gives compounding something to work with. One path keeps you busy. The other path makes you dangerous. Choose carefully.